Hey guys, so I'm going to cover the declarations of Clement Souyri and Melissa Yeager now in this video. We have actually got a ruling, so I'll do that at the end, and I'll go through this now and the Freedman reply to the opposition to the anti-slap motion, and then I'll do a separate video for the judgment, which I'll probably talk about a little bit in more depth. I wanted to go through this because I just find it I found it interesting. It's not funny in the sense that, it's hilarious, but some of this is just wild, very passionate and emotional, which I would expect. But I just thought, well, we're going to read everything. As I always do, we read everything. So let's go into this. Is the declaration of Clement Souyri. He was the spouse of Travis Flores, and he is the administrator for the estate of Travis Flores. Okay. I, Clement Souyri, declare as follows. I am the spouse of Travis Flores, who passed away on May 23rd, 2024, from complications following a life-fighting cystic fibrosis, 3 double lung transplants, chronic liver disease, and kidney failure. In 2012, Travis began developing a screenplay titled 3 Feet Distance, for which he registered a copyright on October 26, 2025. Sorry, not 2025, 2015. So, and that's the registration number. The characters in his script are based on his real-life friendships and experiences of his short life while battling chronic cystic fibrosis. On March 15th, 2019, a major motion picture titled 5 Feet Apart had a wide release. It was purportedly created and directed by Justin Baldoni and written by Mickey Daughtry and Tobias Iaconis. I think it's important to add here, right, that this film was a book adaptation. Okay, so this was based on a book which was published in 2018. And the company published it was Simon & Schuster. It was a #1 New York Times bestseller, and it won an award in 2019, Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Young Adult Fiction. And I think for me, this is where I struggled with the concept that Justin Baldoni plagiarized this script, because he was adapting a book, same as It Ends With Us. This had already been written by other people, and the film was adapted from that. Justin Baldoni did not write the book, so just a context is important. And I just feel like it is needed there. So yes, it was. I mean, he says at the end of this line, it was purportedly created and directed by Justin Baldoni and written by Mickey Daughtry and Tobias Iaconis. That wasn't just the script. They did write the script, but they had already written the book. So, okay. Travis Flores, like Claire Wineland, also participated in the CBS Warner, the network television series entitled My Last Days, hosted by Justin Baldoni, and together they reached a wide audience through their own storytelling. Both Travis and Claire were cast on the CW program, and Travis, like Claire, also met and knew Justin Baldoni personally. Before he died, Travis retained Brian Freedman and Stephen Barnett Stiglitz of Freedman's firm, basically, to represent them against Justin Baldoni and other defendants in a federal copyright infringement action captioned Travis Flores against. And then there's all the people. It's Justin Baldoni, Caleb Remington, Wayfarer Entertainment, Well Entertainment, Lionsgate, CBS Films, and Ambry Genetics. Freedman initially took on the federal case, charged Travis and me, so he also charged the spouse, a large amount of money up front, then filed a complaint. When Freedman received the opening motion to dismiss from opposing counsel for Justin Baldoni and the other defendants, he immediately advised us that Travis's case had no chance of success and should be promptly dismissed. Brian Freedman's behavior was strange. I disagree, and I'm surprised that he is writing it, because the one thing that's not commonly mentioned here is Clement Souyri is a lawyer himself. He's an attorney. I don't find it strange. It is not unusual to file a complaint based on, what your client tells you, then received the other side of the story, either the response or a motion to dismiss or whatever, and realize that actually there were gaps in your knowledge that make a lot of difference to the prospects of success. Yeah. Attorney Freedman next prepared and told Travis not only to sign a full settlement, under which Travis received absolutely nothing, but then also instructed Travis to sign a comprehensive release of any and all liability to the defendants. Now, this bit bothers me a little bit, because I read that statement in full, and it clearly made it expressly stated that it was not just drafted by one party, one side, because I actually commented and said, oh, the way this guy is making it sound is that Freedman wrote this all by himself and issued it to all the parties, but that is not what actually happened. It expressly states that it was negotiated jointly by both the plaintiff, Travis Flores, and the defendants and their counsel. So I don't like that he's put in here, Attorney Freedman next prepared and told Travis to sign a full settlement, because it wasn't just him at all. They all negotiated this settlement agreement together. Attorney Freedman did not bother to interview the key witnesses to Travis's case. On February 17th, 2021, Travis emailed Brian Freedman regarding Melissa Yeager and information relevant to Travis's copyright infringement claims. I obtained this email from Travis's email account, and it is a true and correct copy. A true and correct copy is attached here too as Exhibit 1. There are a couple of exhibits. They are so heavily redacted, it's literally just a few lines, but we'll have a look at them. After reviewing the limited client file produced by Brian Freedman's law firm, it appears that on March 29th, 2022, Brian Freedman sent an email to a Bloomberg reporter in which he quoted Travis and relayed the reasons behind the dismissal of the federal action. A true and correct copy of that email is attached here to as Exhibit 2. Our family's next major shock occurred when we learned that attorney Brian Freedman had jumped over to begin representing Justin Baldoni in a litigation involving actors Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Again, this bothers me. He hardly jumped. We are now 2 years on from the conclusion of Travis Flores's lawsuit. There is 2.5, more than 2.5 years between the Flores lawsuit ending and the Lively lawsuit beginning. And he's hardly just jumped, he was retained. Brian Freedman did not seek out Justin Baldoni. He was contacted by Justin Baldoni. That's how that usually works. Again, the representation here is just I don't like it, because even if the guy has a genuine case, it undermines the language he's using. For me, it just feels like it undermines It's misrepresenting the situation, and I don't like it because these are things that are obvious. It's obviously not true what he's saying. It's obvious that it wouldn't have happened in the way that he is saying it happened. And so what? So what? You know, why nothing has precluded Brian Freedman from representing a client who he has previously represented, you know, an opposing client in a past lawsuit. We did not learn attorney Brian Freedman's shift in loyalties. Oh, Jesus. From attorney Freedman or anyone in his law firm, as one would expect under the rules that regulate attorney conduct in the state of California. Is that I don't even know if that's a thing. Like in the UK, that would not be a thing. Like if someone had represented me previously against, you know, a third party, and then years later, after I passed away, went on to represent that third party in an unrelated case, I would not expect them to be calling, you know, my family to let them make them aware. I don't know if that's a thing in California. That just seems ridiculous. And how many people would you have to notify potentially? Like if that was a thing. If there was an overlap, then fair enough. But where there's no overlap in the claims, in the substance, in the facts, if it does not involve your past client in any way, shape, or form, why have you got to notify someone just because you previously represented them? It just seems it's stupid. I will get off my soapbox in a minute. It's just little things niggle me, really niggle me. Okay. Instead, after Travis's death at age 33, our families and I learned about Freedman's conduct. Conduct? What conduct? From the media and the reporters who began calling me and my families during the Baldoni Lively Reynolds media storm. I'm struggling to figure out how much was this guy contacted over one short statement? I mean, this lawsuit has probably lasted longer than the furor of, the calls that he may have got because a statement was made. I've been contacted by multiple media reporters, including the Hollywood Reporter and the Los Angeles Times, requesting my opinion regarding Mr. Freedman's representation of Justin Baldoni, particularly in light of my prior role as opposing counsel in the copyright litigation. Due to the volume and persistence of these press inquiries, I was compelled to retain legal counsel to protect my own reputation and safeguard the interests and the voice of the estate of Travis, for which I serve as a court-appointed administrator. I have incurred significant expenses as a direct result of Mr. Freedman's defense of Mr. Baldoni in the press while addressing in his own way his representation of Travis. I mean, there's a lot to be said for you could just have ignored it. It would have saved significant expense, potentially, because Freedman's statement did not do any harm. I cannot see the harm that he's claiming was done to the reputation of Travis Flores. I just can't see it at all. I believe Mr. Freedman could have reasonably have anticipated that the lively Baldoni action alone, but also his role as Justin Baldoni's opponent's attorney in the copyright action, would draw press scrutiny. Yet Mr. Freedman took no steps to protect me, my family, or the estate from the resulting reputational and legal consequences. Mr. Freedman's behavior pressed me to request Travis's client file from his firm, which I did on January 31st, 2025, and then on February 6th, 2025, by 2 FedEx letters. Again, if we would just orientate us in terms of times, Freedman was dealing with losing his home, and I think his law firms were affected as well by the California fires at that time. So, on February 13th, 2025, Mr. Turnauer responded to my request and instructed me to retrieve the case file the following day. On February 14th, 2025, I appeared at the law offices of Brian Freedman, where I was provided a flash drive containing the purported file and was asked to sign an acknowledgement of receipt of case file. I signed the acknowledgement but added the following reservation. I did not get the opportunity to check the content of the drive. The assistant who met with me countersigned next to the added language acknowledging my reservation. The contents of the flash drive reflected very limited work performed by Mr. Freedman or his law firm. It contained no invoices, no drafts, no notes, no text, as one would expect, and no evidence of any discovery conducted by Mr. Freedman or his firm. Critically, the absence of invoices prevented me from verifying whether the file was complete and whether the work purportedly performed on Travis's behalf was adequate. I declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct. So, okay, executed on February 20th, 2026, Clement, Souyri. Okay. So let's have a look. So this is an email from Travis Flores. It was dated the 17th of June, 2021. Okay, so it's drafted to Stephen Stiglitz and copied into Brian Freedman. This is before the lawsuit was actually initiated. Hi all, please find attached documents. Aside from the background and thorough analysis of the substantial similarities, as well as proof of access to my script, we know that Caleb Remington had access to his script. And Caleb Remington was a consultant on the film adaptation 5 Feet Apart. You will find a copy of my script, 3 feet distance, in plain form and also an annotated form with a watch guide to inform of every single instance, redacted, where their film 5 Feet Apart infringes upon my script, 3 feet distance. Lastly, in conjunction with my WGA as the Writers Guild of America registration, you will find documentation of my federal copyright, filed with the US Copyright Office years prior to their film. I look forward to our discussions. Okay. So this is all redacted, pretty much. Preliminary elements, IP violation, Travis Flores, screenplay, 3 feet distance against CBS, Lionsgate, motion picture, 5 feet apart. Because I think he sent it to Lionsgate and CBS. And that's how Caleb Remington saw it in advance. What was shown quite clearly was that Justin Baldoni had actually never accessed this script, and Wayfarer. They had never accessed Travis Flores' script. And when Travis Flores was filming Our Last Days, he actually went to great effort. He said himself he went to great effort to keep the script, under wraps and away from Justin Baldoni. And that was part of the reason why, Freedman may well have said, you know what, the prospects are quite low actually now. I've got more information and you should probably just settle it and walk away at this point rather than, incur ongoing expense. Okay, so much of this is actually redacted, but we'll read the little bits that are not redacted. Constating similarities between the screenplay 3 feet distance and the film 5 feet apart, added to the evidence of Justin Baldoni's access to his script prior to developing the film, Travis Flores has decided to pursue legal action in recognition of his rights. This document is the product of his work in his effort to establish an IP violation case. It is intended solely to its addressee and contains confidential and/or privileged information and may be legally protected from disclosure if you are not the intended recipient of this document or their agent, or if this document has been addressed to you in error, please immediately alert the sender and then delete this document. If you are not the intended recipient, you are hereby notified that any use, dissemination, copying, or storage of this document is strictly prohibited. Okay, background. Travis Flores, like Claire Wineland, reached a wide audience through his own storytelling and was later cast on the CW TV show My Last Days, hosted by Justin Baldoni in 2019. Travis Flores recontacted Melissa Yeager, who we now know was Claire Wineland's mother, to bring awareness and funding to the cause and her organisation, Claire's Place Foundation. During a conversation about Claire Wineland's legacy and her impact on the community, Melissa expressed to Travis that Claire was not comfortable with the fashion in which Justin Baldoni used her image in order to support and promote his film, and reported many issues in the relationship between her daughter and Justin. We'll be reading this lady's declaration next. This conversation triggered Travis to dig deeper into what he thought was the real source of inspiration for Justin Baldoni's film. And then there's an awful lot that's redacted. I promise you there is more more to read in this. There we go. Repeatedly, Claire has admitted publicly to not having had friends with cystic fibrosis. Therefore, arguing that the film was inspired by her life seems at best pure marketing, at worst dishonesty about the real inspiration to the film. Then there's more redacted. Melissa Yeager, who has retrieved it from Claire's email inbox. Okay. It's redacted what we're talking about here. It was sent by Justin Baldoni and is dated February 21st, 2017. This document is available upon request but does not figure into these materials. Additionally, during a filming session for Justin Baldoni's show My Last Days, in which Travis would appear, Justin brought up the indoor pool scene from the film, which had already been shot. So yeah, he was filming. The filming of 5 Feet Apart was going on during the time that Travis Flores was, like, some of the scenes had already been shot before Travis Flores actually appeared on My Last Days. So there's a lot redacted. Exhibit 2. So this is Freedman's email. Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. So this is, he's given a statement on behalf of Travis Flores after the settlement and the conclusion of the lawsuit. This is my client's statement. 3 Feet Distance, my script and story was a passion project of nearly a decade. It was based on real friendships and an important time within the cystic fibrosis community, the year the distance rule was first established. Mackenzie, Kevin, Jacob, Nicole, April, Amber, Tina, all friends with cystic fibrosis, who've either passed or continue to battle, that my screenplay paid tribute to. There were so many similarities, beginning with the titles, but also between the characters, scenes, and flow of story, that I felt I needed to stand up for myself and other artists from my community who also struggle to tell their own stories in this business. I ultimately dismissed the case because my health is far more important than the stress brought on by fighting this. I hope that someday there is room for my voice as a storyteller to be heard, as well as others from my community. There is no need to hire someone that is able-bodied and not from our community to create, write, and romanticize our struggles. We are here, willing, and ready to tell our own stories. And that's a really lovely statement. So this is a quoted statement from Travis Flores, which has been, you know, shared through his counsel, obviously Brian Freedman. The issue I have here is I think it is going to cause a problem for Clement Souyri again. Why? Clement Souyri is saying that basically Brian Freedman got the motion to dismiss from Justin Baldoni and then basically told Travis Flores, no, your case has got no chance, settle. But Travis Flores himself, in his own statement, says this: I ultimately dismissed this case because my health is far more important than the stress brought on by fighting this. Actually, it sounds like Travis Flores made the decision to dismiss the case because of his health. Now, I'm sure that, that would have been weighed up. Maybe Brian Freedman looked at the case and said, well, look, if they can back up what they're saying, then the prospects of you winning this have diminished a bit partially, But that is a client's that is a lawyer's job, is to notify their client of things that may affect the chances of them winning the lawsuit. You've got to have those honest discussions. And he may well have been said, well, look, I'm prepared to keep going if you want to, because we could win. We could go into discovery and see what we get from that. But he would have had to been very real about the potential cost and stress involved, because this discovery would have gone both ways. It wouldn't have been that they had free reign to go through the defendants and get information. We have seen this in the Lively Wayfarer lawsuit. All of those defendants would have got to do discovery on Travis Flores. So, and there's a cost involved. And if it gets to the end of the case and he loses, there may be damages. There may be or there may be reimbursement of reasonable attorney's fees. So Brian Freedman, I could see him having those very real conversations and saying, look, you on the face of it, you have a good case, but if what is said in this motion to dismiss, if that's true, if they can back it up, if discovery proves this, we could have your chances of winning are reducing. And then you've got all the stress and all the cost. That is an attorney doing his job and doing it well, because you have got to have these conversations with your client, and you are basically led by your client. You do what your client it wants you to do reasonably, ethically and legally. And it does sound like this line here, it sounds like that Travis Flores and Brian Freedman have had a conversation about all of that, and they've weighed up the fact that Travis Flores is obviously not in good health. He has had 3 double lung transplants. We now know from the declaration from his spouse that he also had liver problems and kidney failure as well. These are all big problems. These are all big things. I've had kidney failure, and it's a huge deal. I'm sure there's lots of people who will verify that too. But it is a big, big deal. Makes you extremely ill, makes you extremely tired, and you are going through grueling hospital trips, treatment, medication with all their side effects. So I can imagine, it's not just cystic fibrosis. He got a new set of lungs and everything was fine, because he would have been on, medication to prevent his body from rejecting the transplant. That in itself is just, the side effects are horrific. So, and then there's all the expense. And I think that they've just had an honest conversation. And in this statement, Flores himself does concede he dismissed the case because his health is more important than the stress. And a lawsuit is incredibly stressful. It's stressful for, the legal professionals involved too. The constant deadlines and, trying to piece together everything. It is hard work. And for clients who have to take risks with their money, their reputation, their career potentially, the stakes are, magnified. Like lawyers get to walk away from it at the end of the day or at the end of the the lawsuit. Clients have to live with the consequences and the outcome. So I can see definitely a world where they've had a conversation and said, they've decided basically that even if it was a reasonable chances of prospect, so even if it was reasonable prospects of success, that the cost is overwhelming, and the stress it would have caused could have exacerbated already poor health. And that is not malpractice. That, to quote Clemens, that is not acting strange. What would be acting strange is if Freedman was aggressively pushing Travis Flores to continue to pursue this lawsuit, even where evidence was actually against them, and it would have just resulted in throwing, good money after bad. It's one thing we say actually in the Lively lawsuit. A few content creators have kind of observed that all the stuff that Lively's lawyers seem to be doing, right, and they're billing her. She's a multimillionaire, as is her husband, and they can afford it. But some of the stuff that they're filing or sending out, like this, all the subpoenas to 107 content creators to get literally nothing, to just withdraw them all. But it intimidated quite a few of the content creators to, slow down talking about her, or some of them stopped entirely. It rattled many. It rattled me. It distracted me from the ongoing filings because it took up my time to deal with it. But also, like, there was a moment, I'm sure people have seen Perez, where he was just absolutely in tears after his subpoena was after it was withdrawn, finally, and he had a bigger ordeal than the rest of us because he obviously ended up in court. But there was a video, I spoke to him about it, where he was just, it's like an emotional release afterwards, where he was just absolutely in tears, inconsolable. His anxiety was through the roof, even though it had all stopped and gone away. And the threat of the subpoena was no more. And I remember having that. I remember I was going through such a dark moment. And, I when I reached out to him and I said, I get it. I had that exact same reaction. You will be okay. I'm not gonna, we talk more than that, but I'm not gonna go into detail. But like, I recognize that emotional kind of overwhelm, and just spent like days, weeks actually, just in tears, struggling. I was lashing out where I wouldn't normally lash out. I was being just like short-tempered, critical, just resentful even of the world, which was just, that was not me, like me, my normal self. But the whole process changed me. And even though I'm from the legal industry, it was so personal because I wasn't a professional. I was myself during it, and I felt very threatened. I felt like, my private information was being threatened, and for what? you know, because I wasn't part of any smear campaign. And it was just horrific. And to see my fellow content creators, because there was a few of us, we did our motions to quash all together, and to see some of them so upset, so worried. It was one of the hardest things I've been through in many, many, many years. So I know I've probably gone on about this quite a lot, but I just want to hammer home the point that actually having a conversation about how hard it is to enter lawsuits, and be part of them. It's one thing when you are a defendant and you don't really have too much choice because you are being brought into it. But here, Travis Flores was the plaintiff. He chose to initiate the lawsuit. Fine, as is his right if he really feels that he has a case. But Brian Freedman's job as an attorney is to advocate for him, which, publicly he'll say and do what his client wants. But behind the scenes, he will be very honest and very real, because if he doesn't, it could be negligence. Yeah, okay. So that is Clement Souyri's declaration. We also have Melissa Yeager. So as we have said, she is the mother of Claire Wineland. This is much shorter, actually. So, and I probably won't waffle so much, but it felt quite nice to actually just to mention like how I felt after my own subpoena, because I don't think I've really said how bad I felt afterwards, and so it's kind of the first time really I've gone, oh, do you know what? That was horrific. You guys are just my de facto therapists. Okay. So this is Melissa Yeager, Claire Wineland's mother. And her declaration: I, Melissa Yeager, declare as follows. I have personal knowledge of the facts stated in this declaration, and if called as a witness, I could and would testify competently thereto. This declaration is made in support of plaintiff Clement Souyri's action against attorney Brian Freedman and his law firm, and in opposition to defendant's special motion to strike, pursuant to Code of Civil Procedure section 425.16. I am the mother of Claire Wineland, an executive director of Claire's Place Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit organization providing support to children and families affected by cystic fibrosis. Claire's Place Foundation is named in honor of my daughter Claire, who lived with cystic fibrosis her entire life and passed away at the age of 21. Wow, that's so young. In her public life, Claire was an activist, author, TEDx speaker, social media star, and received numerous awards. Claire's foundation was and is a way for her to assure that others living with cystic fibrosis enjoyed the same hope, strength, and joy that she enjoyed. Claire Wineland was a well-known advocate in the cystic fibrosis community. During her lifetime, Claire publicly shared her experiences living with cystic fibrosis, including through speaking engagements, writing, and social media. Because of Claire's public advocacy, her name has sometimes been referenced by third parties in connection with entertainment projects relating to cystic fibrosis. I am familiar with the motion picture titled 5 Feet Apart, which has been publicly described in some outlets as inspired by Claire Wineland. Claire was a paid consultant on the movie. Her role was to consult on the script after it was written, giving her input on the reality of living with cystic fibrosis. We signed a contract to that effect with the production company. But Claire did not write 5 Feet Apart, nor did she co-write it. However, she was consulted on the script and participated to a reading with the cast. I've communicated that information on multiple occasions to Travis Flores, who related to me sharing that information with his attorney while pursuing his copyright infringement lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. I was never contacted by Travis's attorney, Brian Freedman, in relation to Travis's copyright dispute with Justin Baldoni, or I would have been transparent with him regarding the above. Travis wrote the storyline. I have an issue with that slightly. Travis wrote the story. Travis may have written a version of the storyline, but she cannot definitively state that he wrote the storyline that became the film 5 Feet Apart. Because, as we said at the start of this video, it was written by other people. Tobias, sorry, Tobias Iaconis and I can't remember the other person now. Tobias Iaconis and Mickey Deltry. It was written by them. So, you know, they weren't sued. Just, I'd be curious to know how a lawsuit would have panned out had Travis Flores sued them. But they weren't sued. So Claire Wyman was a consultant on the film, on the script, same as Caleb Remington. Okay. I knew Justin Baldoni personally during Claire's lifetime. I interacted and communicated with him on multiple occasions in connection with public-facing projects, events, and/or activities involving the cystic fibrosis community. The statements in this declaration regarding Mr. Baldoni are based on my personal observations and my direct communications with him, as well as communications Claire shared with me as she was passing. Sadly, Claire passed away prior to the release of the film. Prior to her passing, she took issue with the way Baldoni seemed to use many sick people for his own career advancement without any compensation. Primarily, the show My Last Days is one example, as she was featured in an episode and was not compensated for it. Claire cared about authenticity and making sure sick people were not exploited. Baldoni mentioned to Claire that she would be linked to 5 Feet Apart as the inspiration behind writing a movie about a boy and girl that could not be together due to both having cystic fibrosis. Following a conversation they had about how people with cystic fibrosis could not date. That was the extent of the inspiration. We did not hear anything further until he asked her to consult on the script as a person living with cystic fibrosis. In my interactions with Mr. Baldoni, he made statements and representations to Claire, to me, and/or to Claire's Place Foundation about supporting or benefiting Claire and/or the cystic fibrosis community in connection with the film and its public attention. These representations included assurances that there would be tangible benefits to the community and/or the foundation tied to the use of Claire's name and image and the film's association with cystic fibrosis. In other words, aside from her compensation as a consultant, and although Justin Baldoni and his companies made in excess of $94 million, neither Claire nor her foundation nor anyone associated with Claire benefited, and Mr. Baldoni did not keep his promises. More importantly, it has taken away the opportunity for us to make a movie or content about her, as it has already been used by Justin Baldoni though the story is not based on her life experiences. I mean, I would have to see the evidence. That doesn't sound great. I would find that very surprising if Justin Baldoni was like that. I mean, if his mission is to raise awareness, then the film raised awareness of cystic fibrosis. It did. And the fact that it was actually tied to Claire Wineland's name, it does raise awareness then of her foundation. I know it doesn't sound like much, right? But like when I did the Marilyn Starkloff case against Aviation Gin and Ryan Reynolds, and I kind of explained to people, like, being paid for something is important, absolutely, but not all compensation comes in the form of money. For like for a photographer like Marilyn Starkloff, Aviation Gin crediting her for her work that they were using, that is a big deal. That is significant compensation because it forms part of their portfolio, and it's work that they've done for, Aviation Gin is a big company. Ryan Reynolds, I hate to admit it, is a big name, and to be able to have that in your portfolio is a lot of it's huge for a photographer, even if she wasn't paid for the actual work. Just having Aviation Gin and Ryan Reynolds as clients is a big deal because it leads to other things. People sit up and take notice, and I'm not diminishing, like, if she should have been paid, she should have been paid, and she was paid for the consulting role. If she should have been paid for the My Last Days, I don't know what was agreed. We would have to look at what was agreed there. It may well have been that it was, because it wasn't a role. It was just an interview, kind of thing. Like the format, it was like a documentary, I guess. Should she have been compensated? I don't know. I don't know how these things work. So I know some places do compensate, others don't. A family member of mine who has multiple sclerosis has, she was part of a documentary. She was not paid for taking part in the documentary, and it didn't matter to her because the whole objective was to raise awareness. So I'm not sure. The way it's been worded here does not make Justin Baldoni sound great. You've got to look at it, with context. Again, context needs to keep being put into these things. Also to say that, the opportunity for Claire Wineland's family to make a movie or content about her has been taken away because Justin Baldoni's made a film which he said was inspired by her. I find that absurd. Of course she can make her own movie or make her own content about her daughter and her daughter's life. I don't see, even if it had been, even if Justin Baldoni had already done it, there's nothing stopping them doing their own thing. Oh, I'm really on my soapbox today. I find that some of this is so irritating, though. This is giving me lively vibes. Okay. Based on my observations and to the best of my knowledge, many of those representations were not ultimately fulfilled. I endeavoured to address these issues in a measured and non-adversarial manner. I deliberately refrained from escalating the dispute publicly or engaging in public confrontation, in part because I hoped and expected that Mr. Baldoni would honour the commitments and assurances he had communicated to Claire, to me, and or to Claire's Place Foundation, and that positive community benefits would materialise. As part of that approach, I exercised restraint and forbearance, choosing to handle concerns privately and respectfully, despite my discomfort with certain public statements made by Justin Baldoni and his companies and unauthorised promotional uses of Claire's image to support Justin Baldoni's movie. I did so to avoid unnecessary conflict and to protect Claire's emotional well-being, and because I believed it was in the best interest of the cystic fibrosis community and the foundation to pursue constructive outcomes rather than public controversy. My focus remained on protecting Claire's dignity and the integrity of the cystic fibrosis community while still hoping that the promised support would be provided. What I will say is what I'm hearing is I had all these problems with Justin Baldoni, but I never actually spoke to him about them. And this is just making me think back to Blake Lively's deposition where she was like asked, "Did Steve Sarowitz sexually harass you?" And despite the fact that Steve Sarowitz, you know, had clearly never sexually harassed Blake Lively at all, never said anything, remotely sexualized to her. She said, "Well, yes, because he dismissed my concerns." And then she was asked, "Well, did you ever raise your concerns with him?" No. So this is like, well, if you got these problems with Justin Baldoni, talk to him. I hate it when people come out and say, "Oh yeah, he was such an asshole." I never pointed it out to him, but he was an asshole. Like, really? Why are you coming out now and saying this? And again, I'm not dismissing or diminishing her experiences and her feelings. I just find it weird that, people don't just have a conversation and say, "Hey, you upset me here," and give someone an opportunity to either explain, apologize, and make good. Like people just, form an opinion and that's it. Oh, we're going to run with that. Okay. Based on my experiences and observations, and based on what Claire communicated to me, I formed the perception that Mr. Baldoni benefited publicly from association with sick or vulnerable individuals, including by using those associations to promote himself and or projects. I mean, there are at least 2 people with cystic fibrosis who are paid to consult on this film. So that is given an opportunity, whether she recognizes that or not. It's like working with a domestic violence charity for a domestic violence movie to raise awareness about that, and then giving them 1% of the entire proceeds. I'm just not seeing she's saying, "Well, he didn't do this and he didn't do that, so therefore he uses sick or vulnerable individuals to promote himself." I'm not seeing it. Oh, I make this declaration to provide accurate information regarding A. Claire Wineland's lack of involvement in the development or writing of 5 Feet Apart, and B. My observations concerning Justin Baldoni's character on promises and assurances made to Claire, to me, and or to Claire's Place Foundation in connection with the film's use of Claire's image and its public messaging. I mean, no one ever said that Claire Wineland wrote, developed or wrote 5 Feet Apart. I think the words were inspired, which, could well be the case. Because the film was about the distance rule, which applied to, cystic fibrosis sufferers in general, not just Travis Flores and not just Claire Wineland. And that's what the film was about. It wasn't about someone's entire life, a specific person's entire life, but it was, I think Justin Baldoni explained that it was, you know, understanding how someone lives with cystic fibrosis and some of the things they have to do, like distance from other people, that kind of, led to the inspiration that Claire Wineland is credited with. But no one has actually said that, well, she wrote the thing. Um, Okay, so I mean, my stance is the same. My stance is the same. We will never get to the truth really of what happened because the lawsuit was dismissed voluntarily by Travis Flores for whatever reason, whether it be his help or advice from his legal counsel. But it is, I maintain my stance that, you know, people can have very similar ideas, you know, and put them down. I find it interesting though that Travis Flores did not sue the people who actually wrote both the book and the screenplay for 5 Feet Apart. He sued the director of the film and the production company and, you know, multiple, but, you know, people, but not the actual people who wrote this thing. Okay, so next video is gonna be Freedman's, so Freedman does a short reply to the opposition, and then we have the actual judgment, so I'll do those 2 videos next. Then I've got some lively Wayfarer case stuff that I wanna just go over, some observations and a little bit of a look back at the, some of the documents as well that were unsealed, just a, you know, a second look at some stuff with fresh eyes.